In the opening scene, we see two women in nightgowns moving erratically, as if in a somnambulistic state. They blindly collide with a wall. All of this takes place on stage. One actress falls, followed by the other. A third character, a man, clears the stage of chairs so the women don't trip. One of them chases after him and begins performing a semblance of a dance, which the other soon mimics. A middle-aged man in the audience is moved to tears. Later, Benino Martin, an orderly, shares his impressions of the performance with Alicia, a comatose patient. As he speaks, he gently gives her a manicure. Benino recalls that a man in his 40s sitting next to him wept, and Benino deeply understands his feelings. He has a small surprise for Alicia. He brought her an autograph from one of the dancers, Pina Bausch. Of course Alicia couldn't see it, but Benino believes she can hear him. He cares for her as if she were a porcelain doll. The colleague, Matilda, asks Benino to cover her shift again. He readily agrees, expressing sympathy for how hard it must be to raise her children alone. Matilda thanks him sincerely, unaware that he seizes any opportunity to be alone with Alicia. Journalist Marco Zuluaga lives alone in his apartment, regularly watching TV shows about Lydia Gonzalez, a famous bullfighter. Marco plans to write an article about her. At a bullfight, Marco is captivated by Lydia and falls in love at first sight. Lydia, recently out of a toxic relationship, lets Marco approach her in a bar. Marco offers to give her a ride. Lydia shares that her father had always dreamed of becoming a bullfighter but never succeeded. He passed away a year ago. Marco reveals that he's writing an article about her. Lydia dislikes the idea, as she's grown weary of the media's attention. As Marco drives away from Lydia's house, he hears her screams and stops. In a panic, Lydia gets back into his car, saying there's a snake in her kitchen. Determined to help, Marco enters her house and gets rid of the reptile. During this, he cries for some reason. Lydia asks Marco to take her to a hotel. He complies and even escorts her to her room. She asks him not to tell anyone about her fear of snakes, a secret only her family knows. Marco assures her that he respects others' fears. After what he's done for her, Lydia can't refuse his request for an interview. Benino lives alone, rushing to work every morning to see Alicia again. Caring for her brings him joy. The girl has been in a coma for 4 years, but Benino believes the day will come when she wakes up. The rest of the medical staff, however, aren't as optimistic. Lydia and Marco begin to bond. Like Lydia, Marco has also gone through a painful breakup and is now divorced. Months pass. Marco and Lydia start dating. Lydia even introduces him to her family. Before another competition, Marco helps his beloved put on her costume. Lydia is the only woman among the competitors, but she's used to it by now. Nothing portends trouble until a bull knocks Lydia off her feet and drags her across the arena. She's rushed to receive medical attention. At the hospital, Marco and her family are informed that she's fallen into a coma. Lydia's sister blames their late father, believing his influence led Lydia to become a bullfighter. 3 weeks pass. Lydia's sister needs to leave town for a while. In any case, there's been no improvement in Lydia's condition. She remains comatose. Marco stays by her bedside. Lydia's ex-boyfriend, Nino de Valencia, also visits. Nino has an important contract requiring him to leave for America for 3 months, but now he's unsure. Marco clearly dislikes Nino's presence but doesn't ask him to leave. Marco feels utterly powerless, blaming himself as he constantly thinks about his beloved. Their brief romance now feels like a distant memory. Some time ago, Lydia had asked Marco why he cried that day when he got rid of the snake. Marco explained that long ago, when he and his former love were in Africa, he'd had to do the same thing. Lydia wants to do everything she can to make Marco forget his past relationship. In the present, Marco is on his way to speak with Dr. Vega when he happens to see Alicia in a nearby ward. Later, Marco asks the doctor how long Lydia might remain in her current state. Dr. Vega explains that it could last for months, years, or even her entire life. There are very rare cases of people in such a condition coming out of a coma, but the chances are almost zero. Lydia's brain is effectively dead. She has no thoughts or feelings, only vegetative reflexes. Noticing Marco, Benino invites him to step into Alicia's ward. That's how the two men meet. Benino recalls seeing Marco crying at the performance. Marco feels embarrassed and quickly leaves, but Benino kindly tells him he can visit any time. Alicia's father grows concerned about the orderly's unusual attention to his daughter. To dispel suspicion, Benino does everything he can, even lying that he is attracted to men. Alicia's dance instructor, Katerina Bilova, is preparing to leave for Geneva to stage a production. She spends a long time talking to Alicia while Benino listens, and Marco observes from a distance. After saying goodbye to her former student, Katerina is about to leave. Benino promises to take care of Alicia. He has truly grown attached to the girl, believing that if she were conscious, she would undoubtedly reciprocate his feelings. Marco joins Benino and asks about Caterina. Benino shares that Alicia used to attend a dance academy. Caterina loves her like a daughter. The story shifts to 4 years ago. The dance academy is located right across from Benino's home, and he spends hours watching Alicia through his window. At that time Benino lived with his mother. He develops an interest in Alicia that soon turns into obsession. One day when she drops her passport on the street, Benino picks it up and follows her. Alicia thanks the shy young man and allows him to walk her home. She shares that she loves dancing, traveling and silent films. Benino's life isn't as full. He has spent many years caring for his ill mother, who recently passed away. Alicia too has lost her mother. As she walks into her house, Benino can't take his eyes off her. He manages to find out that her father is a psychiatrist. The next day when Alicia doesn't attend her dance class, Benino decides to make an appointment with her father under the pretext of grieving his mother. During the session, Benino tells the doctor that he has cared for his mother for 15 years. He even took medical courses. Now Benino struggles with loneliness. When asked if he has ever been in a relationship, he admits he has no experience. The doctor invites him for a follow-up session the following week. Since the doctor sees patients at home, before leaving, Benino discreetly ventures into Alicia's room. He immediately senses that she is a sweet and dreamy girl. As a keepsake, Benino steals one of her hairpins, but as he is leaving he runs into Alicia. Without explaining anything, Benino quickly leaves. From that moment Alicia occupies all his thoughts. That same day Caterina receives the news that Alicia has been hit by a car. Meanwhile, Benino continues watching out his window, but Alicia doesn't return to her lessons. It rains all week. The next time Benino sees Alicia it is here, in the hospital. Now Benino tells Marco that Alicia's father visits her regularly, refusing to give up hope. To share in his beloved's interests, Benino starts spending weekends at the ballet and renting silent films from the film library. The only thing he doesn't do is travel, devoting all his time to caring for Alicia. Marco on the other hand is the complete opposite. He can't even bring himself to touch Lydia or help the staff care for her. Benino advises Marco to simply talk to Lydia. Perhaps her brain is dead, but what if the doctor is wrong and there's still hope? After all, the human body is a mystery. Most of the medical staff believe that Benino prefers men because no one has ever seen him with a woman. Rosa, who has feelings for Benino, finds it unbearable to listen to these rumors. That evening Benino invites Marco to join him at the film library, but Marco declines, citing a meeting with his editor. Despite Benino's advice, Marco still can't find the strength to talk to Lydia. Deep down he knows it's over. The same can't be said for Benino, who styles Alicia's hair and does her makeup, admiring her. He also tells her about the last silent film he watched, about a female scientist whose beloved accidentally drinks an experimental serum she developed. The serum causes him to gradually shrink until he disappears entirely. A month passes. Benino and Marco grow closer and start spending more time together and with their lovers. Unlike Benino, Marco has almost lost hope. 2 months have passed since the fateful bullfight, and he realizes that Lydia will never wake up. In the next scene, we see events from some time ago, when Lydia and Marco attended the wedding of Angela and Benjamin shortly before the bullfight. Angela was Marco's former love. It took him 10 years to move on from her, but now he is ready to let go of the past and feel happy for her. Throughout the wedding, Lydia seems troubled by something. She tells Marco that they need to have a serious conversation after the bullfight. Unfortunately, that conversation never happens. In the present, Marco finds Lydia's ex-boyfriend Nino in her hospital room, holding her hand. Nino confesses that he and Lydia rekindled their relationship a month ago. Lydia had planned to tell Marco after the bullfight. Marco doesn't object to Nino's presence. After all, it was Lydia's choice. Later, Marco visits Alicia's room and tells Benino about his plan to leave the country for a while. Benino had a feeling this was coming. Meanwhile, Nurse Rosa notices something unusual about Alicia's condition and plans to inform Dry Vega. After his shift, Marco agrees to give Benino a ride home. When Benino shares his plan to marry Alicia, Marco is outraged, pointing out that a woman in a coma cannot say yes or no. To Marco, Benino's feelings for Alicia seem deeply unhealthy. Benino is upset, having hoped for Marco's understanding but not receiving it. A medical board is convened to discuss Alicia's pregnancy. The chief physician wants to know who could commit such an atrocity. All evidence points to Benino, who clearly falsified information in the medical reports. Additionally, one of the staff mentions overhearing Benino talking to Marco about marrying Alicia in the parking lot the day before. 8 months pass. In Jordan, Marco is trying to write a book when he stumbles upon an obituary for Lydia Gonzalez in the newspaper. She passed away very recently. Marco calls the clinic and asks to speak with Benino, only to learn that he no longer works there. From Rosa, Marco discovers that Benino is now in prison. Since Benino has no relatives in Spain, Marco is the only one who can help him. As a loyal friend, Marco takes the first flight back to Madrid and arranges for the detention center worker to pass his new phone number to Benino. Visits are allowed only on Saturdays and Sundays. At the earliest opportunity, Benino calls Marco. They arrange to meet on Saturday. Marco cannot understand how Benino could do something like this to Alicia. Yet despite everything, Marco remains his friend. Benino is concerned only for Alicia and the baby's well-being. Marco knows nothing about them because Alicia has been transferred to another clinic, and the hospital staff refuses to provide any information. During their in-person meeting, Benino shares that he now works in the prison's medical unit. His thoughts are consumed by Alicia, and he admits he has been thinking about Marco as well over the past months. Alicia's father and the forensic doctor believe Benino is a psychopath, which could work in his favor during the trial. Benino asks Marco to find out anything he can about Alicia and to find tenants to rent out his apartment. Marco offers to rent it himself. That evening, Marco meets the concierge and moves into the apartment. The concierge mentions that for some reason the case didn't gain public attention. She doesn't even know why Benino was arrested, describing him as a kind and sweet man. Marco decides not to tell her the truth. In Benino's apartment, Marco notices a photo of Alicia on the wall. The window overlooks the ballet school. Seeing Alicia there, Marco can't believe his eyes. Could he be imagining it? No, it turns out to be true. Alicia is now undergoing rehabilitation, with Caterina helping her. Marco spends a long time watching them from the window. Later, he meets with Benino's lawyer, who explains that Alicia came out of her coma during childbirth. Sadly, she lost the baby. Marco believes they should tell Benino about this, but the lawyer deems it a bad idea. They could inform him about the baby but not about Alicia waking from her coma. By the time Marco meets with Benino, the lawyer has already told him. Benino realizes that he can no longer escape judgment in court. But at least Alicia's okay. The next day Marco receives a voice message from Benino, who bids him farewell. Benino doesn't want to live in a world where Alicia isn't by his side. With horror, Marco understands what his friend intends to do. He tries to stop him, rushing to the prison in a taxi, but of course it's too late. Benino voluntarily passed away. The prison warden hands Marco a letter from Benino. In it, Benino writes that he had hoped to fall into a coma himself and join Alicia, unaware that she had awakened. But instead he died. He also bequeaths his apartment to Marco, his only friend. Reading the farewell letter, Marco cries. The prison staff also gives him Benino's personal belongings, including Alicia's hairpin. Marco visits his friend's grave. Benino never found out that Alicia was alive, and Marco blames himself for this. Soon Marco attends another ballet performance. This time the production is more uplifting, symbolizing the reunion of men and women. It was here that Marco and Benino first met. During the intermission, Marco sees Alicia, who smiles at him. Caterina remembers Marco and fears for Alicia. Marco assures her that he means no harm. He also tells her about Benino's death. During the performance, Marco turns to look at Alicia. She doesn't remember him being in her hospital room while she was in a coma. They will have to get to know each other all over again. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel not to miss more exciting new products. Also, the authors will be pleased if you leave your opinion in the comments.